Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Dakota Brando channel. My name is Dakota, and today we are talking about Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, released in 1966. This is the second video in my debut cinema series, where it's a video essay series where I take a look at a director's first film that they ever made. And today we're talking about Mike Nichols. Mike Nichols, just a little bit about him. His most famous movie is The Graduate. He started out in comedy. He worked with his comedy partner, Elaine May. They both had a show on Broadway called An Evening with Mike Nichols and Elaine May. Hint, hint, Elaine May is someone I'm going to be talking about later on my channel. She is an acclaimed director herself, as well as Mike Nichols. He is a very acclaimed director. But instead of The Graduate, what I always like to do in this series is talk about that very first film. So it's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? It's starring Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor, George Segal, and Sandy Dennis. And there's not many other people in the cast. There's two people that are uncredited. So how could a film get this much acclaim, very first film, with only 4 people in it? Well, these 4 people are amazing actors. When I was growing up, I watched movies for acting and stars, and I still do to this day. I really find a movie to be the best, not for the best action scene or the biggest scare, but the best acting. And you can't go wrong with Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, who were married at the time of this film. This film opens up in a collegiate setting. He actually filmed at a real-life college, which he learned later on was one of those first-time director mistakes, that he could have just done that on a lot, because it takes a lot of effort to shoot on scene, and he had issues with that. There was issues with the stars. There was a lot of problems with this film, but that's the case with a first film. This film shows that you can start with just 4 people in a room. As I've said before, film's a collaborative process. This script by Edward Albee, which is based on his play from 1962, is incredible. Let's just take a look at the first scene here with Elizabeth Taylor's character. And keep in mind, Elizabeth Taylor was the most gorgeous woman at that time. She was a beautiful actress. And she went through like Robert De Niro levels of putting on weight, changing her, even the way she walked, the way she looked, the way she acted. She did so much for this role. Let's just take a look at the very beginning.
And she comes in and she looks around this room and she sets down her groceries. And she says, "What a dump."
So that "what a dump" line, that line isn't actually what it sounds like in the movie that Bette Davis was in. She's trying to remember this line from this movie and wanting her husband to tell her, hey, what movie is this? Well, that line, let's just listen to it.
What a dump.
Yeah, so you see the difference. That line, the way she read it, the acting on screen here is always like at 100 from someone in the scene. And it's funny, a little background about this film, that the stars, both Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, were insanely famous. They were the Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie couple of their time. They basically were the most famous couple. And so with that, they could do what they want. They would drink sometimes way late into the day, wake up way late as well, and come to set, work for a couple hours, and then leave. And it made Mike Nichols very frustrated. But when they were there, we are seeing their performances that are given. Incredible work. But also the directing. You notice the beginning of the film with the setting and how he just stays on his characters, the blocking that he does, just tracks them. He doesn't feel like he needs to go in and zoom in the very beginning. He lets his actors come to him. He lets them walk past the screen. Mike Nichols is a very actor's director, and you can tell this from this film. I remember watching this film when I was young, and the fact that it blew me away. I never saw anything like this, when I was young. The acting that came from it, I was watching all these older films from the 50s and 40s, and then this comes along, and it is in that era of new Hollywood, and you can tell there's something in the water. There's something different. There's screaming. There's divisive language. They even have the phrase "God damn you" instead of "screw you," which they wanted to use. The censor said, "Okay, we got to put "God damn you" there." Speaking of the censors, this film was ushered in with the rating of 18 and under has to be accompanied by an adult, so the precursor to an R-rated film. And to think of this as an R-rated film, of just a film of four people talking, that says a lot. It was also, when I was young, I felt this was an adult film. Not in the not in the way you're thinking, but in a way of these are adult subjects. I felt mature. I felt like I was peeking into something that was only behind closed doors. That what's so great about this movie is that it's the behind the closed doors, the things you don't see are being brought up to the front with the help of alcohol, of course, but still, what Mike Nichols does here in his very first film is give us a peek into the life of a married couple who has been through a lot. This isn't their honeymoon. The other couple that comes in is kind of the before. It's a new teacher and a wife. They just met. They've been married for only a few years, and compared to Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, it's like the before and the after. I always wondered when I was watching this too, why the young couple didn't leave. And when I rewatched it recently, I realized, well, they were drinking. They didn't want to drive. So they were stuck there until someone was sober enough to drive. But you see what happens when Richard Burton drives? Yeah. He doesn't seem sober. And they go dancing. And this trauma that is always at the surface of social interactions bubbles forth in this couple. They don't let anything hide. In a way, they're showing who they really are. And for a director to capture that and give us that glimpse shows us what an amazing director he is. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf comes from Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf. They couldn't use that based on the rights from Three Little Pigs that Disney owned, but they went with it anyway. And you're watching it and you're thinking, oh, this is an inside joke I'm not getting. But in the end, you realize that kind of the whole thing was an inside joke. We may not be able to get what we're seeing. We're not allowed to see behind the curtains, but Mike Nichols is showing us. An incredible film. I highly recommend you check it out. Check it out for the acting. Check it out for the story. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Watch those films, baby, and keep tuned to the Dakota Brando channel to see what is next.